The desert wind rolled through like a whisper of trouble the afternoon Colt Hayes rode into town. Dust clung to his coat, to his face, to the long miles behind him. Beneath him, his black Mustang, Raven, let out a tired snort. 3 hard days on the trail wearing them both thin. Colt was 28, with steel-gray eyes and a scar carved across his left cheek, the kind a man earns and never talks about. He had no kin left, no friends waiting. Just Raven, and a lonely cabin out in the middle of nowhere where silence had been his only company. But that day, something in the air felt different, like the world was about to shift. As he rode into town, he saw a crowd gathered in the main square. Voices clashed, tempers flared, and worry hung thick over every face. Colt slowed Raven and listened. 200 horses, Bert Callow barked, his voice loud and greasy as his grin. The Crow gang wiped out a whole Apache herd. And why should we care? Someone snapped back. That's their problem. Let the Red Sky people deal with it. Something tightened in Colt's gut. He swung down from the saddle and stepped closer. What exactly happened? He asked, his tone steady, controlled. Bert Callow looked him over, eyes narrowing. And who might you be, stranger? Just a man asking a question, Colt replied. What happened to those horses? Before Bert could answer, an old man stepped forward, Jed Mercer. His eyes were worn but sharp, like he'd seen too much to waste words. 3 nights back, he said, voice low. The Crow gang hit a camp north of here, took every last horse, 200 head. Without 'em, the Red Sky people won't make it through winter. No hunting, no moving, nothing. Colt glanced around. And nobody stepping in? Laughter rippled through the square. Help the Apache? Bert Callow scoffed. You ain't from around here, are you? No one's dumb enough to die for them. Besides, the Crow gang's mean. 10, maybe more, all armed. Colt scanned the crowd. Shrugs, averted eyes. Not a single soul willing to act. Not one. Then his father's voice echoed in his mind, clear as the day he died. Son, a man ain't measured by what he owns, but by what he does when nobody else will. Colt gave a slow nod, more to himself than anyone else. Which way they go? Jed Mercer raised a brow. You serious? You ride out alone, you won't come back? I just need a direction. The old man studied him, then pointed west. Red Mountains, but folks don't return from there. Colt swung back into the saddle. Guess there's a first time for everything. Before he left, he looked once more at the crowd, the Dustfall folk standing there like spectators at a hanging. Not one of you, he said. 200 horses, families, kids. That mean nothing to you? Silence. A bitter smile touched his lips. Yeah, figured. With that, he kicked Raven forward and rode west, straight into the unknown. The sun dipped low behind him, painting the desert in fire and shadow. Ahead stretched nothing but sand, rock, and risk. Colt knew the odds. 10 armed men against 1. It wasn't smart, it wasn't safe. But something deep inside him wouldn't let him turn back, a voice telling him this was what he'd been shaped for. Every loss, every lonely year, every scar, he had nothing left to lose. And maybe something worth finding. He rode until the stars took over the sky and the cold crept into his bones. He found shelter in a narrow canyon and built a small fire. Just as the flames caught, a sound cut through the stillness. Colt was on his feet in an instant, hand ready, eyes slicing through the dark. I know you're there, he said evenly. Step out. For a moment, nothing. Then a figure moved from the shadows, a tall Apache warrior, broad-shouldered, long black hair falling down his back, eyes sharp and burning. A bow rested in his grip, a knife at his side. "You're the white man who left town," the warrior said. His English was clear, edged with accent. "I've been tracking you." Colt didn't flinch. "Why?" "Because I want to know why a stranger would risk his life for my people." Colt met his gaze. "Name?" "Kiona." "Well, Kiona, I don't have some grand reason. I just know what they did was wrong. And when something's wrong, someone's got to stand up." Kiona watched him in silence, weighing every word. Then slowly, he lowered his bow. "You're not like the others," he said. Colt shrugged faintly. "Or maybe I'm just a fool." For the first time, a faint smile touched Kiona's face. "Then we are two fools," he said, "because I am hunting them too. And now, we ride together." Colt nodded, and beneath that endless desert sky, something rare took shape, an alliance neither of them had expected. That night, they sat by the fire in silence, flames dancing against the canyon walls. Two men from different worlds, bound by the same purpose. Colt studied Kiona quietly. There was something in the warrior's eyes he knew all too well, the weight of loss, the kind that never leaves. "The rest of your people," Colt said at last. "Why didn't they send more?" Kiona didn't answer right away. He reached down, stirring the fire with a stick, sparks drifting into the night. Kiona reached down, picked up a dry branch, and slowly stirred the fire before he spoke. "My people are not strong right now," he said, his voice low. "Last winter nearly broke us. We lost elders. We lost children. The Sky Riders who remain must stay behind to guard the camp, to protect the river women, the little ones. Someone has to stand watch." Colt Hayes studied him. "So you came alone." Kiona gave a slight nod. "I have no wife, no children. If I fall, no one will carry my name in grief." Those words struck Colt hard, like hearing his own story spoken by another man. The same emptiness, the same reason he'd ridden out without hesitation. "We're not so different," Colt said quietly. Kiona's eyes held his. "Maybe. But you're still a white man. Why does any of this matter to you? Your kind calls us savages, hunts us, takes our land." It was a fair question. Colt leaned back slightly, looking up at the endless sky, searching for something honest enough to answer with. "I ain't my kind," he said at last. "When I was a boy, we had a small ranch. One night, men like the Crow gang came through. Took everything. My pa tried to stop 'em. They left him dying in the dirt." His jaw tightened. "My ma, she didn't last a year after that. Grief took her. I was 12. And alone." Kiona listened without interrupting. "Since then," Colt continued, voice rougher now, "I know what it feels like to lose everything. I know what it's like when nobody steps in, when folks just stand there and watch. I won't be one of those men. I can't." Kiona nodded slowly, something shifting in his gaze, something deeper than before. "You carry honor, Colt Hayes," he said. "Among my people we have a name for men like you. We call them Brother of the Soul. Not bound by blood, but by spirit." Colt felt that settle in his chest like warmth he hadn't known in years. It had been a long time since anyone spoke to him like that, since he felt like he belonged anywhere at all. "Appreciate that, Kiona." Kiona's expression hardened just a touch. "Save your thanks. We still have work ahead, and it will not be easy." At first light they set out, tracking the Crow gang across the desert. Kiona moved like he could read the land itself, eyes catching signs Colt would have missed entirely. A snapped twig, a shifted rock, faint prints pressed into sand. 10 men, Kiona said, crouched low, studying the ground. Maybe 11. The herd is large. They move slow. Colt scanned the horizon. How far ahead? 2 days. They're heading into the Red Mountains. Rough country, but it will slow them more than us. If we push hard, we can close the distance. So they rode. The sun burned overhead without mercy, heat rising in waves that made the world shimmer like it was melting. Still, neither man complained. Neither suggested stopping. Along the way, Kiona spoke of the Red Sky people, their ways, their beliefs, the bond they shared with the land. For us, horses are not just animals, he said. They are family. Each one carries a spirit. When a child is born, a foal is chosen for them. They grow together, live together, protect each other. Colt exhaled slowly. 200 horses, he muttered. Kiona didn't answer. That means every family lost something, Colt went on. Kids crying over their closest friend, elders stranded without a way to move. His grip tightened on the reins, anger rising steady and hot. We're getting them back, he said firmly. All of them. By the end of the second day, the land began to change. The Red Mountains rose ahead, jagged, towering, their stone dark crimson like it had been soaked in blood long ago. The earth split open into deep canyons, sharp and unforgiving. Kiona suddenly raised his hand. Colt stopped Raven instantly. Smoke, Kiona said, pointing north. Colt narrowed his eyes. There it was, a thin column drifting up between the cliffs. Camp? Colt muttered. About 2 hours out, Kiona said. We go careful from here. If they spot us too soon, we lose everything. They waited for darkness. When night finally fell, they hid their horses deep inside a narrow canyon and continued on foot. Every step was deliberate, every breath measured. An hour passed in silence before they reached the edge of a cliff. Below them, a hidden valley opened wide. The sight below hit them like a punch to the chest. 200 horses, every last one, packed tight inside a rough-built corral. Around them, the Crow gang had made camp, their fires flickering against the canyon walls. Colt Hayes narrowed his eyes, counting shapes in the firelight. 10 men, he murmured. 11, Kiona corrected quietly. One up there. He nodded toward a high rock overlooking the valley. Watching everything. Colt studied the layout. The corral sat dead center. The outlaws were sprawled in loose clusters, sleeping close to the horses. Only 2 guards were active, one perched high above, the other pacing near the herd. We need a plan, Colt said. Kiona gave a slight nod. You think, I act. Together, we finish this. Colt's gaze lingered on the horses. He pictured the little ones waiting, the cold winter creeping closer, everything those animals meant to the Red Sky people. I've got something, he said at last, but it's risky. Kiona's lips curved faintly. The only kind worth doing. Colt let out a breath, tension mixing with a strange sense of focus. All right, listen close. They stayed low on the ridge as the full moon spilled silver light across the valley. Every detail mattered now. The guard up top sees everything, Colt whispered. We take him out first. Quiet. Once he's gone, the second guard won't have time to react. Kiona nodded. I'll handle the one on the rock. There's a path along the east side. They won't see me coming. Good, Colt said. Once you're done, I'll move on the corral. I open the gate, get the herd moving. Once they start running, it won't matter how loud it gets. The stampede will cover us. And the second guard? Kiona asked. Colt paused, thinking it through. I'll pull him away. Toss a rock out wide. When he goes to check it, I slip in and open the gate. Kiona considered it, then nodded. It will work. But there is one problem. Colt glanced at him. The horses don't know you, Kiona said. They smell a stranger, they panic too soon. Everything falls apart. Colt frowned. Then what? Kiona reached up and pulled a small leather pouch from around his neck. Sage, river herbs, he said, handing it over. The scent of our people. Put it on your hands, your clothes. They will know you are not a threat. Colt opened the pouch and did as told. The smell rose sharp and earthy, something wild but calming at the same time. Appreciate it, he said. Kiona's eyes sharpened. Save it. The night hasn't even begun. Without another word, they split. Kiona vanished into the dark like he belonged to it, silent as wind through stone. Colt watched him go for half a second, then turned and started down the western slope. Every step was careful, every movement measured. His heart pounded hard, but his breathing stayed steady. No room for mistakes. It took nearly 30 minutes to reach the edge of the corral. From the shadows, Colt spotted the second guard, a broad-shouldered man with a heavy beard, rifle hanging loose at his side, pacing slow and lazy. Colt lifted his gaze toward the high rock. The guard was still there. Then suddenly, gone. Kiona had done it. Colt exhaled once. Now it was on him. He picked up a stone, weighed it in his hand, then hurled it hard across the far side of the corral. It struck rock with a sharp crack. The guard froze. "Who's there?" he barked, turning toward the sound. Step by step, the man moved away from the horses. That was all Colt needed. He slipped forward, fast and silent, reaching the gate. The horses turned their heads toward him, some shifting, a few letting out soft, low sounds, but none bolted. The herbs were working. Easy now, Colt whispered, fingers already working the thick rope binding the gate shut. Easy. We're getting you out of here. The knot fought him. Tight, stubborn, soaked with tension. Seconds stretched long. Then, "Hey!" The shout cut through the night. The guard had seen him. The knot was tight as iron, twisted and pulled hard from days of strain. Colt Hayes worked at it with trembling fingers, the rough rope biting into his skin. Time stretched thin, every second dragging like a lifetime. That guard could turn back any moment. Then, finally, the knot slipped loose. Colt yanked the gate open and stepped inside the corral. The horses turned toward him, ears flicking, eyes alert but not afraid. He had to move them, but not too soon, not too wild. "Hey, intruder!" The shout cut sharp through the night. Colt's head snapped up. The guard was charging straight at him, rifle coming up fast. No time left. Colt clapped his hands hard and shouted at the top of his lungs. The reaction was instant. 200 horses surged forward like a breaking flood, hooves pounding, bodies crashing towards the open gate in a roaring wave. The guard barely had time to dive aside before the stampede thundered past him, his rifle knocked clean from his grip. "Wake up!" he screamed. "The horses! They're getting out!" The camp erupted. Men stumbled from tents, half asleep and cursing, tripping over gear and each other. But it didn't matter anymore. The herd was already moving, unstoppable. Colt ran alongside them, pushing through dust and chaos, guiding their path towards the eastern pass where Kiona would be waiting. Then, pain exploded through his left shoulder. Something slammed into him hard. He hit the ground, rolling through dirt as hooves pounded past inches away. Dust filled his lungs. A man came at him fast, Brock Hale, grabbing another rock, fury in his eyes. "You thieving bastard!" Brock roared. "I'll crush you for this!" Colt tried to rise, but his shoulder burned like fire, refusing to answer him. Brock closed the distance, ready to strike. Then a shape tore out of the darkness. Kiona. He hit Brock like a bolt of lightning, driving him to the ground with a clean, brutal strike. The two men crashed into the dirt, grappling, fists flying. "Go!" Kiona shouted. "Get the horses moving, I'll catch up." Colt froze for half a heartbeat. Leaving him didn't sit right. "Go!" Kiona barked again. "The herd comes first." Gritting his teeth, Colt pushed himself up, ignoring the pain tearing through his shoulder. He ran. He found Raven where he'd left him, hidden deep in the rocks. With one motion, he pulled himself into the saddle. "Let's move, partner," he shouted, driving the Mustang forward. Colt rode hard, cutting ahead of the stampede, steering the herd through the narrow paths, keeping them moving toward open ground. Behind him, the valley was alive with shouting, gunfire, and chaos, but he never looked back. He couldn't. All he could think about was Kiona, and whether he'd make it out alive. They rode through the night, through canyons, over ridges, across endless stretches of dust and stone. Hours passed before the first light of dawn painted the sky in soft orange and pale pink. At last, Colt slowed near a river. The horses poured toward the water, drinking deeply, sides heaving, but they were free. Colt sat in the saddle, breathing hard, scanning the horizon. Then he saw it. A lone rider, cutting through the morning light. Kiona. Relief hit Colt like a wave. He rode out to meet him, heart pounding. Up close, Kiona bore the marks of the fight. A cut across his forehead, dried blood at his lip. But his eyes were steady. Alive. "I figured you weren't coming back," Colt said, voice rough with relief. Kiona smirked faintly. "Men of my people don't fall so easy, and I gave you my word." He paused. "We were supposed to be fools together, remember?" Colt let out a laugh. Real, deep, the kind he hadn't felt in years. "What about the Crow gang?" he asked. "Angry, confused," Kiona said, "and without horses. By the time they find new mounts, we'll be long gone." They both looked back at the riverbank. 200 horses stood scattered along the water, drinking, grazing, alive. They had done it. Kiona's gaze dropped to Colt's shoulder. "You're hurt." Colt glanced down, only now feeling the full weight of it. Throbbing, sharp. "I've had worse." "Sit," Kiona said. Colt slid off Raven and pulled his shirt loose. Kiona examined the injury carefully, fingers steady. "Nothing broken," he said. "But you'll carry that bruise for a while." Colt gave a faint grin. "Wouldn't be the first time." Kiona reached into his pouch, pulled out a handful of leaves, and chewed them into a thick paste. Then he pressed it gently onto the wound. "This will ease the pain," he said. "Keep it from turning bad." The cool mixture sank into Colt's skin, dulling the fire just enough. "This is medicine from my people," Kiona said. Colt Hayes gave a small nod. "Thank you, brother." The word came out on its own. Kiona looked at him, caught off guard for a brief moment. Then his expression softened, and he nodded back with quiet respect. "Brother," he repeated. "Yes, that is what we are now." They rested by the river for a few hours before moving on. The Red Sky People's Camp was still a day's ride away. The horses, though worn from the journey, carried a different kind of energy now, like they could feel home drawing near. Colt felt it too. By the time the sun dipped low the next evening, they reached a wide green valley cradled by mountains. Along the riverbank stood rows of leather lodges, smoke rising from cooking fires into the fading sky. The little ones played near the water while the river women worked hides under the last light of day. Then someone noticed. Everything stopped. A child's voice rang out first, high, sharp, full of disbelief. "The horses! Kiona brought the horses back!" In an instant, the camp came alive. People ran, sky riders, river women, little ones, tears streaming down their faces. Mothers clutched their children. The stone elders lifted their hands to the sky in silent thanks. Colt sat there, watching, something heavy rising in his chest. He had never seen joy like that. Children rushed to their horses, wrapping their arms around their necks, crying and laughing all at once. This wasn't just about animals. They had gotten their hope back. From the crowd, an old man stepped forward slowly, Nantan. His white hair fell past his shoulders, and his weathered face carried the marks of a lifetime of war and wisdom. In his hand, he held a staff adorned with eagle feathers. "Kiona," Nantan said, his voice deep and steady, "you have brought honor to your people." Kiona shook his head slightly. "I did not ride alone, Nantan." He gestured toward Colt. "This man risked his life for us. Without him, the horses would be gone forever." Nantan turned his gaze to Colt. Those dark eyes studied him in silence, long enough to make a man feel like every truth inside him was being weighed. "Why?" Nantan asked. Colt slid down from Raven and stepped forward, standing straight. "Because it was right," he said. "Because no one else would do it, and because I learned a long time ago, a man's worth ain't measured by the color of his skin." Silence followed. Then, slowly, a faint smile creased Nantan's face. "You speak with wisdom," he said. "Tonight we celebrate. Tomorrow, you will receive what you have earned." Colt raised a hand. "I didn't do this for a reward." Nantan gently cut him off. "Among my people, bravery must be honored. To refuse such a gift is to turn your back on us." His voice remained calm, but firm. "Do you understand?" Colt glanced at Kiona. Kiona gave a small nod. Colt looked back at Nantan. "I understand," he said. "And I accept, with respect." That night, the camp came alive like it hadn't in years. Drums echoed across the valley. Voices rose in ancient songs. Firelight danced across faces as people gathered, celebrating around great blazing fires. Colt was seated beside Nantan, treated as an honored guest, given the finest food they had. But even in the middle of it all, something else caught his attention. Across the fire, someone was watching him. A young woman. Her hair fell dark as midnight over her shoulders, smooth as flowing water. Her eyes, deep, amber, almost golden, held his without hesitation. There was strength in her face, in the way she carried herself, something fierce beneath her beauty. She didn't look away. Neither did he. "That's my sister," Kiona said quietly beside him. "Ayana. And it looks like she's taken notice of you." Colt felt heat rise to his face. "She's something else." Kiona gave a faint grin. "She is more than that. She's the bravest woman among us, and the hardest one to win over." The next morning, the entire camp gathered. The air had changed, no longer joyful, but solemn, ceremonial. Nantan stood upon a raised platform. Colt stood before him. "Colt Hayes," Nantan began, his voice carrying across the crowd. "You saved our people. You returned what was taken. For this, you are owed our greatest gift." He raised his hand. From the gathered crowd, 20 young women stepped forward. The Sun Maidens, each one dressed in finely crafted leather, adorned with beads and symbols of their people. They formed a half circle before Colt. Then, together, their voices rose, soft, harmonious, like wind moving through the valley. "We are yours to choose. Take one, and she will walk beside you." Colt felt the world fall silent around him. Nantan spoke again. "These are the unmarried daughters of our people. As thanks, you may choose one as your wife. You will become one of us, part of our family." Colt Hayes swallowed hard. His pulse thundered in his ears. He looked across the 20 sun maidens, each one striking, each one worthy, but his eyes searched for only one. And there she was. Ayanna stood at the far end of the line, watching him with the faintest hint of a smile, like she already knew where this was going. Colt stepped forward. He walked past one woman, then another, and another. All beautiful, all hopeful, but he saw only her. When he reached Ayanna, he stopped. Slowly, he held out his hand. "Will you stand with me?" he asked, his voice low but steady. Ayanna glanced at his hand, then lifted her eyes to meet his. For a heartbeat, the world went still. Then her face softened, lighting up like the first light of dawn, and she placed her hand in his. "I've been waiting for you," she whispered. The moment their hands met, the valley exploded with life. Drums thundered, voices rose in song, the little ones laughed and ran in circles around them. The river women lifted their voices in celebration. Nantan raised his staff high, and slowly the noise faded. "Today," he declared, his voice carrying strong across the gathering, "is a day our people will remember. A man from another world has shown us that courage has no boundary. He stood for us, and now he stands among us." His gaze settled on Colt. "In 3 days, you will be joined in marriage, according to the ways of our ancestors. Until then, you will learn our path. Ayanna will guide you." Colt nodded, still trying to grasp the weight of it all. Just days ago, he had been alone. No purpose, no home. Now, everything had changed. The next 3 days passed like nothing he had ever known. Ayanna showed him the life of her people. Every path, every fire, every story carved into the land. She taught him their words, their meanings. She showed him how the river women prepared medicine from herbs gathered along the water. She pointed to the painted symbols on the lodges. "This one marks the sacred mountain," she said. "And this, the river that gives life. Every family tells their story this way." Colt listened, drawn in completely. He had never seen a life so deeply tied to the earth, to memory, to something greater than himself. But more than anything, he was drawn to her. Ayanna wasn't soft. She wasn't waiting to be saved. She stood strong, sharp-minded, with a quiet fire in her spirit that pulled him in deeper every day. "My brother taught me the bow when I was young," she told him one afternoon as they walked beside the river. "The elders said it wasn't a woman's place, but I didn't listen. I practiced in secret until I could outshoot most of the Skyriders." Colt smiled faintly. "That doesn't surprise me." She tilted her head slightly. "Why?" "Because the moment I saw you, I knew you weren't like the others." Ayanna stopped walking. She turned, looking straight into his eyes. "Then tell me, why did you choose me?" she asked softly. "There were others, younger, quieter, easier." Colt didn't answer right away. He thought about it, about everything. "I don't want easy," he said finally. "I want something real. When I saw you, I saw someone who doesn't hide who they are. Someone who'd walk beside me, not behind me." His voice softened. "Someone I could build a life with. Something true. Ayanna didn't speak. For a moment she just stood there, and then a single tear slipped down her cheek. "All my life," she whispered, "I waited to hear that. I thought that man didn't exist." Colt reached up, gently brushing the tear away with his thumb. "I'm right here." Not far off, Kiona watched in silence, a quiet satisfaction in his expression. His sister had found someone worthy, and he had found a brother. The morning of the wedding arrived clear and bright. The sky stretched endless and blue, no clouds, no wind. The stone elders called it a blessing from the spirits. The entire tribe gathered by the sacred river. Flowers and colored feathers decorated the clearing. Drums beat low and steady, like the pulse of the earth itself. Colt stood beside Nantan, dressed in the traditional clothing prepared for him. A soft leather shirt adorned with blue and white beadwork, matching trousers and moccasins fitted perfectly to his feet. He stood there, waiting, knowing his life would never be the same again. Colt Hayes stood there with his heart pounding, nerves tight in his chest. But beneath it all, a deep, steady happiness settled over him, greater than anything he had ever known. Then the crowd slowly parted, and Ayanna stepped forward. Colt forgot how to breathe. She moved toward him with quiet grace, dressed in a white leather gown adorned with fine, intricate patterns. Her dark hair was braided, woven with red flowers and eagle feathers that caught the sunlight. Her eyes shimmered, bright, alive, like stars against the night sky. She was the most breathtaking thing he had ever seen. When she reached him, their hands found each other without hesitation, like they had always belonged that way. Nantan began the ceremony, his voice rising in ancient words carried through the language of the Red Sky people. The rhythm of it filled the air, deep, sacred, timeless. Then he spoke again, this time in a tongue Colt could understand. "Marriage among our people," Nantan said, "is not simply the joining of two lives. It is the meeting of two rivers, flowing together as one. Two paths becoming one journey, two spirits choosing to walk side by side until the end." He lifted a cord woven from red, blue, and white threads and gently wrapped it around Colt and Ayanna's joined hands. "This binding carries meaning," Nantan continued. "Red for passion, blue for loyalty, white for the purity of your hearts. As long as you remain united, this bond will protect you." He turned to Colt. "Do you swear to care for this woman? To honor her as your equal and walk beside her through all that comes?" Colt's voice came strong and certain. "I swear. Do you swear to stand with her people as your own? To defend this tribe as you would your own blood?" "I swear." Nantan turned to Ayanna. "Do you promise to stand beside this man? To guide him? To share your strength? And walk with him through every storm life brings?" Ayanna's voice was clear and steady. "I promise." Nantan raised his staff. "Before the spirits of those who came before us, and before all who stand here today, I declare you bound as one. Two rivers, now one. Two souls, now one family." The valley erupted. Drums thundered. Voices rose. Laughter and song filled the air. Colt looked at Ayanna. Her eyes glistened with tears, but her smile was brighter than anything he had ever known. "I love you," he said softly. "And I love you," she answered. Kiona stepped forward, pulling them both into a firm embrace. "You're my brother now," he said with a grin. "So you better take good care of her, or you'll answer to me." Laughter rippled through the crowd. That night, beneath a sky full of stars, the celebration carried on. Later, away from the noise, Colt sat beside Ayanna in front of their own lodge. A home. Their home. He looked out across the horizon, where the desert stretched endlessly beneath the night sky. Not long ago he had ridden through that same land with nothing but emptiness at his side. Now, he had everything. Ayanna beside him, a family, a people who called him brother. The desert wind moved softly through the lodges, carrying with it the quiet promise of something new. The lone cowboy was alone no more.